My family always relied on me financially, but when I stopped helping, they turned me into the villain. After years of supporting my family, I was expelled and accused of being selfish. There have been other occasions over the years when I felt ignored, such as birthdays when Mark would receive the pricey presents while I received something useful like new socks or a coat, or vacations when his family had all the attention while I sat quietly on the sidelines. It didn't matter, I told myself. I assumed that was just the nature of parents. In addition, I had always been self-sufficient. I didn't require the attention or the hype. Things changed even further once Mark married Becky and had his first son, Jason. Mark was suddenly more than simply the favorite, he was the one who brought us grandchildren. Now that they could proudly call themselves grandparents, my parents were ecstatic, feeling as though their lives had been completed. Though I couldn't help but feel a little invisible in my own family, I was also pleased for him. I dismissed it though, since family helps family, as I've always told myself. This is where it all began to go south. Mark lost his job at the conclusion of the previous year. His business was among the first to close when the small retail chain he worked for began closing its sites. It was awful. I was genuinely sorry for him. I recall Becky sobbing when she called my parents, concerned about how they would make ends meet on her meager part-time bakery salary. They were devastated to lose Mark's paycheck since, shocking as it may seem, he wasn't the best with money. However, my parents' solution was to ask him, Becky, and their 2 children to move in with them rather than helping him come up with a practical strategy to get back on his feet. It may seem acceptable on paper. Family stays together through difficult times, and they have room. The space they so kindly offered was mine, and that was the problem. It took place on a Sunday evening. I had just returned from a lengthy work trip, fatigued, and all I wanted was a bed and a shower. I sensed something was wrong the moment I went through the door. At the kitchen table, my parents were waiting for me. Dad was silent as usual, tinkering with his watch, and Mom had her typical worried expression. "Sarah, honey, we need to talk," Mom remarked. Suddenly tense, I sat down after dropping my bag beside the door. Mother didn't mince words. "You know how hard things have been for your brother since he lost his job. He's got Becky and the kids to worry about, and they really don't have anywhere else to go." My heart sank. I could already see where this was going. Even though I knew the answer before I spoke, I nevertheless inquired, "So where are they going to stay?" Mom's smile was as if she had practiced it 100 times. "The basement suite is perfect for them. It's separate from the main house, so they'll have their privacy. Becky and the kids will be comfortable there." I glanced at her, attempting to take it all in. "Wait, my basement suite? Where am I supposed to go?" Dad spoke up at last, although in a hushed tone. "We've set up the hobby room for you. It's cozy. You'll have plenty of space." What I was hearing was unbelievable. It was a glorified closet, the hobby room. It housed Mom's sewing machine, containers of seasonal decorations, half-finished projects, and stacks of fabric. It wasn't a bedroom at all. In the hopes that this was some strange prank, I asked, "You're kidding, right?" Mom became defensive in her tone. "It's only temporary, Sarah. Besides, this is our house, and we need to make decisions that benefit the family as a whole. You'll be fine in the hobby room for now." It was the old-fashioned statement. "It's our house." I sat there in startled silence as the talk came to a close, and my parents congratulated themselves on their generosity and helpfulness. I was not a big argue. What was the purpose? I didn't like it, but Mark was moving in. Neither my comfort nor my space mattered. That evening, I packed up my laptop, clothes, and toiletries. I gazed at my tiny suite in the basement, which I had turned into my home in recent years. It was mine, even though it wasn't flawless. I had my favorite scented candles, comfortable blankets on the couch, and bookshelves full of literature. It was all being torn away from me now to make room for Mark and his family. They didn't even ask, which was the worst part. It was determined for me, as if my opinions were completely irrelevant, and there was no discussion, no family gathering, and no, "Sarah, how do you feel about this?" Not in the hobby room, not in a house where I was obviously only a supporting part in someone else's story. I knew by the next morning that I couldn't stay. I therefore devised a strategy. I reserved a reasonably priced all-inclusive resort in the Florida Keys for the 2 weeks I had off in between job trips. It wasn't elegant, but it was less expensive than buying food and paying $1,600 for a property I no longer even lived in. It also included calm and tranquility, 2 things I really needed. My parents seemed uninterested in my plan when I informed them about it. The actual turmoil didn't start until I left, even though Mom responded, "Well, if that's what you need to do." My phone buzzed 2 days into my vacation at the resort. It was Mom's message. "Mom. Hey Sarah, where's the money for rent and groceries this month? We're counting on it to help support Mark and the kids." Speechless, I gazed at the letter. She couldn't be serious, surely. When I gave her a call back, we had a conversation that went something like this. Mom, I don't live there anymore. Why would I pay rent? Because we're still a family, Sarah. You know we're all in a bind right now, and Mark needs that space more than you do. But you gave away my space, I'm not even there. At that point, Dad called, his voice firmer than normal. You can't just leave your family hanging like this. We raised you better than that. Talking to a wall was like that. They insisted on the same thing no matter what I said. I was self-centered. I was leaving my family behind. I also had a responsibility to Mark's troubles. Then Mark called and added his voice. Sarah, you don't understand. I have a family to take care of. You don't need the space like we do. I lost my temper. Mark, when you had your job, did you ever send Mom and Dad money to help out? No, you spent it all on yourself. So why am I supposed to bail you out now? That temporarily silenced him. I was trembling with rage by the time the call was over. I had been the one keeping everything together for years, taking care of my parents, making the payments, and being the responsible one. For what purpose? To be ejected from my personal space and accused of selfishness for standing my ground. I came to a realization at that point. This was no longer about supporting my family, it has to do with control. They betrayed me after I declined to play a part they had never asked me to play. Out of guilt, I sent Mom $400 for food, but that was all. I would no longer continue to support their lives at the price of myself. I was unaware at the time that this was only the beginning. The whole family would be rocked by my determination to defend myself, and I would never have encountered such a strong reaction. After I refused to continue paying for a place I no longer occupied, things quickly fell apart. I had no idea how far my parents and the rest of my family would go to keep me in line, even if I felt the guilt trip during that initial phone call was awful. The Florida Keys all-inclusive resort was meant to be my haven, a place where I could relax and get my mind straight. I wasn't spending $1,600 a month in a basement suite from which I had been evicted, for once. Everything I needed was there in the small bungalow I rented: good meals, a view of the pool, and most importantly, tranquility. It was like a taste of freedom, something I had been longing for but had not even understood. However, that tranquility was short-lived. My phone was constantly buzzing with missed calls and texts on the third day of my visit. Mom. Sarah, we're disappointed in you. This isn't what family does. Dad. It's not fair to leave us hanging like this. Are you only concerned with yourself, Mark? Every communication was like a kick to the gut. It was obvious that Mark had joined my parents' campaign to wear me down since they were unrelenting. At first, I didn't respond to any of them. The texts continued, despite my assurances that I needed time and that they would ultimately stop bothering me. Then came the phone calls. Out of pure exasperation, I picked up once, only to hear Mark's voice on the other end. His tone was accusatory, as if he had practiced the question. You know what you're doing to Mom and Dad, right? They're struggling. The house is too expensive, and now they're trying to help me and my family. You're making it worse by leaving. I don't get how you can be so selfish. What I was hearing was unbelievable. Selfish? I asked again, attempting to remain composed. You took my space, Mark. I'm not even living there anymore. Why would I keep paying for something I don't have? It's not about space, Sarah. It's about family. I have kids to think about, and you don't. You should be helping out more, not running away. Its daring was astounding. Here was my brother, who had mismanaged his finances for years, telling me that I owed him money to support his children. I ended the call. At the time, that was the only answer I could come up with. I was beginning to feel like I couldn't get out at the end of the week. Even though my parents lived in Riverside, 1,000 miles away, their comments followed me everywhere. There was a new message waiting for me each time I looked at my phone. The tone fluctuated, at times expressing rage, guilt, or an odd mix of the two. Mom. Sarah, think of Jason and the kids. They're just little boys. Do you really want them to suffer because you're being stubborn? Dad. You owe it to us. We took care of you when you were younger, now it's your turn. Mark. You'll regret this when the kids remember how their aunt turned her back on them. Nor were the texts the only thing. My extended family became interested. I began receiving calls from relatives I hardly knew, Uncle Gary, Aunt Linda, and others I hadn't spoken to in years. Aunt Linda? Sarah. Honey, she said on a single call. I'm sure you don't mean to upset your parents like this. They've done so much for you. Can't you just help a little longer? Mark really needs it right now. I felt like screaming. Bitterly, I thought, a little longer? What was the slightly longer duration? 1 more month? A year? Forever? I had been paying more than my fair share for years, but nobody seemed to care. The day following my return from the Keys was the last straw. I was in the middle of unpacking when my little Columbus apartment was knocked on. My parents were standing there when I opened it. With a heavy folder gripped in her hands, Mom appeared worn out but resolute. Although his presence loomed like a silent threat, Dad remained mute as usual. Stunned, I said, "Mom, Dad, what are you doing here?" Mom exclaimed, "We need to talk," as she walked into the living room, sweeping by me. I was forced to let them in after Dad pursued her. As if they owned the place, they took a seat on my couch. Mom began laying out documents on the coffee table after opening the folder. I knew right away what they were: supermarket receipts, repair estimates, and utility bills. "Sarah," she said, "we can't do this without you. Look at these expenses. The mortgage is still due, the roof needs repairs before winter, and Mark's kids need school supplies. We need your help." Stunned, I gazed at her. "I'm not living there anymore. Why should I pay for any of this?" Dad yelled. "Because you're part of this family." At last. Family sticks together when times are tough. You don't just run off because things get hard. I could feel my anger erupting. "You didn't ask me, Dad. You didn't ask how I felt about giving up my space. You just decided for me, and now you want me to keep paying for it? That's insane." Even if Mom's tone softened, the manipulation was obvious. "Honey, think of Jason and Liam. They don't understand why their aunt isn't helping. We just want to keep this family together." For me, that was the turning point. This had nothing to do with groceries, the mortgage, or even Mark's children. Control was at issue here. I was always supposed to be the good girl, the responsible daughter who would keep everything running smoothly, according to my parents. And they had no idea how to respond now that I wasn't complying. I got up and gestured to the door. "I think you should go." Mom's eyes got big. "Sarah." "No," I cut in. "I'm serious. You need to go." Dad appeared truly astonished for the first time. "They never expected me to resist, I believe." Mom remarked, "We're just trying to do what's best for the family," as they walked slowly to the door. I didn't answer. I locked the door after they had left. Then I sat trembling on the couch. My family's expectations, my personal wants, the years I'd spent being the good daughter, and the covert sacrifice of my financial independence so they could live comfortably were all on my mind as I lay awake that night. I realized then that I had been facilitating this scenario for years. They became reliant on me as soon as I began making money. They expected more from me the more I contributed. Mark's poor life management was not my fault, and I had no obligation to correct it. However, liberation was not going to be simple. I told my parents to back off, but they weren't going to do it. I would have to battle for my life if I wanted it back. At that point, I decided. I would continue to assist them when I could, but I would no longer allow them to dictate how I behaved. If I didn't live in the house, I wouldn't pay for it. I wouldn't feel bad about refusing to pay Mark's mortgage or his children's school supplies. I texted Mom one final time the following morning. "I can't continue to pay for everything, even though I love you. I'm not an ATM, but I'll assist when I can. Please be mindful of that." In less than an hour, the response was received. "Mom, I can't believe you're doing this to us, Sarah. We're family." I didn't respond. I felt like I was regaining control of my life for the first time in years. I foolishly believed that I had seen the worst of it, that perhaps, just perhaps, they would give me some breathing room after my parents' surprise visit and the onslaught of guilt-tripping texts. I was mistaken. In my family, it turns out that advocating for yourself is the same as declaring war. It creates a full-fledged tsunami rather than simply a ripple. The next stage of this conflict was a virtual family gathering, where everyone with a phone and an opinion had a front-row ticket to my crucifixion, in typical Evans family manner. An email was the first step. "Mom. Sarah, we've scheduled a family meeting for this Sunday at 3 p.m. It's important. Your aunts, uncles, and cousins will be there, please don't miss it." Of all the passive-aggressive things I had ever read, that please, was it? A meeting with the entire family? It was unbelievable to me. Was it really their intention to humiliate me by gathering the whole extended family? Did they believe that I might be fixed in some way by a mass ambush? I nearly forgot to log in. I considered completely disregarding it and letting them all shout into space, but I knew deep down that doing so would only serve to strengthen their story. Sarah's avoiding us because she knows she's wrong. I therefore set an alarm for 2:55 p.m., with a terrible feeling in my stomach, and joined the video conference. My parents, Brother Mark, Aunt Linda, Uncle Gary, Cousin Rachel, and a few more relatives who only ever showed up at weddings and Christmas dinners were all present when the screen loaded. I glanced at the squares on the screen, and I could tell from the reticent looks that I was going to be put to the death. The first person to speak was Mom, and she wasted no time in doing so. Her voice was filled with fake concern, as if I were a lost child rather than an adult who dared to put herself first. "Sarah, we're all here because we're concerned about you and the decisions you've been making lately." I remained quiet as they planned their speech. The next 30 minutes were a haze of guilt tripping and accusations from all sides of the screen. Aunt Linda's response: "Sarah, we're all family here. You can't just turn your back when people are struggling. Mark and the kids need support right now. We all pitch in when times are tough." Uncle Gary says, "Your parents have done everything for you. Now, when it's your turn to step up, you're acting like it's too much to ask. Family comes first." Aunt Rachel: "I want to be independent, but you don't just cut off your family. That's not how we were raised." Naturally, Mark then added his voice: "Do you know how hard it is for Becky and me right now? The kids don't understand why their aunt suddenly doesn't care about them. Jason asked me the other day why you don't want to see them anymore. What am I supposed to tell him?" It was a powerful blow. Although I adore my nephews, Mark was well aware of his actions. He was using them as a weapon against me, manipulating the circumstances to paint me as a cold-blooded monster. After what seemed like hours, they finally gave me the opportunity to speak. Despite my trembling palms, I inhaled deeply and unmuted myself. "Look," I remarked, attempting to maintain a steady tone. "I love this family. I do. And I've been helping for years. Paying rent, paying for groceries, doing whatever I could to keep things running. But this is too much." Mom's expression tightened, but I persisted. "I'm not living at home anymore. You gave my space away without even asking me, and now you're expecting me to keep paying for it. That's not fair. You're all acting like I'm abandoning you, but I'm just trying to take care of myself for once." There was silence in the room. I wasn't done yet, but I could see Mom shaking her head and getting ready to respond. "Mark," I uttered while looking straight at his video square. "You're my brother, and I care about you, but you've never been responsible with your money. When you had a job, did you send money to Mom and Dad to help out? No, you spent it on yourself. And now, when you're in trouble, suddenly I'm the bad guy for not bailing you out." Despite his hot face, Mark remained silent. I added, "And the rest of you," as I turned to face my extended family. "Where were you when I was the one keeping everything afloat? None of you had anything to say when I was paying $1,600 a month for a basement suite I only lived in half the time. But the second I draw a boundary, suddenly I'm selfish." The ensuing hush was deafening. Uncle Gary was frowning, Aunt Linda was scandalized, and my mother was about to cry. Dad refused to look into my eyes as he sat there with his arms folded. Mom finally said something. "Sarah, we just don't understand why you're acting like this. This isn't like you." That was it. The last straw. I didn't wait for an answer before saying, "This is me, Mom. I'm just not the doormat you've gotten used to." With a gratifying thump, I closed my laptop after selecting Leave Meeting. The text began right away. "Mother. You didn't have to humiliate us like that." Sarah said, "We were trying to have a conversation." Mark said, "You've changed. I hope you're happy leaving your family behind." Aunt Linda said, "I can't believe how disrespectful you were to your parents." I disregarded them all. I no longer owed them an explanation. But despite my sense of justification, I was powerless to stop the guilt from eating at me. I had always been the good girl, the responsible daughter who never got into trouble, growing up. It felt strange to stand up for myself, like if I were violating some holy family law. I sat with a glass of wine on my couch that evening and tried to take it all in. I became increasingly aware that this was about more than just money and space as I gave it more attention. It has to do with control. My family had depended on me for years, thinking I would always be compliant. They turned against me as soon as I left that position. I have no regrets about my remarks throughout the meeting. It was the first honest thing I had said to them in years, if anything. I was aware that the worst was yet to come. My family was not going to silently give up. They had only barely begun. I hoped things would settle down after the family gathering. Perhaps I was naive, but I believed that perhaps the surprise of my at last defending myself would cause them to back off, give me room, give themselves time to think. I was mistaken. My refusal to back down simply made things more heated, if anything. I felt as though I had prodded the bear, and it was now using all of its strength to claw back. Boundaries were not something my family respected. They viewed them as obstacles to be surmounted. The attempts to pull me back into the fold were blatantly intrusive, the manipulation became more daring, and the guilt trips became more acute. It took place a few days following the family gathering. My coworker Sam stopped by my office as I was finishing up a customer report. "Hey, Sarah, some woman called reception asking for you and said she was your mom. She left a message with Emily, but I think you should hear it." I felt sick to my stomach. Emily gave me a sticky note while wearing a perplexed expression, and I followed him to reception. The message said, "This is Sarah's mother, Nancy Evans. We're going through a difficult moment, and I need to talk to her about some pressing family issues that may be interfering with her ability to concentrate at work. Please urge her to take the initiative. Thank you." I froze, looking at the message as if it were about to burn in my palms. My mother had contacted my place of employment. My workplace, not to see how I was doing, nor because of an emergency, but to leave a note implying that I wasn't doing my share to support the family. I was embarrassed, enraged. I crumpled up the message, my face burning. Sam smiled awkwardly at me. Everything okay?" I gave a rigid nod. "Yeah, it's fine, just family stuff." However, it wasn't good. As soon as I got home that night, I called my mother. "Why would you call my work, Mom? That's completely out of line." She sounded angry, as if I were the one who was being unfair. "I had to get your attention somehow. You're not listening to us, Sarah. Maybe hearing it from someone at work will help you see how serious this is." What I was hearing was unbelievable. "My work has nothing to do with you or Mark or your bills. You can't drag my professional life into this." Mom didn't think twice. "We're your family. We come first. You need to start acting like it." "No," I firmly answered. "I don't. I need you to respect my boundaries, and I need you to leave my job out of this." "Limits?" She laughed. "This isn't about boundaries, Sarah. This is about family loyalty. You're abandoning us and you don't even see it." I ended the call. Arguments were pointless. Nothing I said would convince my mother to change her story because she was so engrossed in it. When I woke up the following day, I was inundated with alerts. I knew who it was without even looking at my phone. My brother Mark had indeed made a Facebook post. His initial post was ambiguous, just enough to evoke pity without providing specifics. "Mark Evans. You discover your true family during difficult times. When it's inconvenient for them, some people lose track of their origins. Even though we're trying our hardest, it's difficult when some folks refuse to help." The comments came flooding in. "Mark, keep going, you're capable. Family is the most important thing. One day, whoever is disappointing you will come to repent it. Toxic people are not necessary in your life. Pay attention to your lovely family." But the best part was when Mark himself sent out a direct message. "Mark, Jason is constantly inquiring as to why you no longer come. Are you okay with me telling him that his aunt doesn't give a damn about him?" I sat there looking at my phone, feeling both angry and sad. Knowing how much I loved Mark's children, I detested the way he used them as a weapon against me. However, I was also aware that this was typical Mark behavior: play the victim, elicit pity, and paint me as the bad guy. I declined to respond. I refused to play his game. My parents were bound to try something different eventually. It was to be anticipated. I was enjoying some rare quiet time that Saturday morning while drinking coffee when someone knocked on my door. As I looked through the peephole, my heart fell. There they were, Dad and Mom, standing on my porch, Mom holding a manila envelope. I contemplated not responding. I knew they wouldn't go, but I might have acted as though I wasn't home. I inhaled deeply before opening the door. I said, "What are you doing here?" Without even waiting for an invitation, Mom took action. Dad followed her as she pushed past me. As though they owned the place, they took a seat on my couch, and Mom took out the folder. "We need to talk about finances," she continued, laying out receipts and bills on my coffee table. I gave my temples a rub. "Mom, we've been through this. I'm not paying for a house I don't live in anymore." With a stern voice, Dad said, "Sarah, you don't understand. We're struggling. Mark's struggling. The roof needs to be fixed before winter, and there are school fees for Jason and Liam. It's not just about you." I exploded. "It's always about me, Dad. It's about what I can give, what I can pay for, what sacrifices I can make to keep everyone else comfortable. Well, I'm done. I'm not your ATM, and I'm not responsible for Mark's problems. We're not asking for much, Sarah. Just $2,000 a month to help with the basics. Is that really so unreasonable?" Mom shot back, her voice cracking. Stunned, I gazed at her. "You think $2,000 a month is not much? Are you hearing yourself right now?" From there, the discussion took a turn for the worse. They always responded with blame and guilt whenever I attempted to defend my position. "After everything we've done for you, family is supposed to help each other. Mark has kids to think about. Sarah, you don't understand because you're single." I had finally had enough. I got up and gestured toward the door. "You need to leave." Mom looked at me as if I had given her a slap. "Sarah." They gathered their belongings and departed, slamming the door behind them, but Dad murmured something under his breath now. I collapsed onto the couch once they were gone, feeling as though I had just finished a marathon. My chest felt constricted, and my head was thumping. I kept thinking about the dispute, my dad's disappointment, my mom's tears, and how I felt like I was failing them. But I knew in my heart that I wasn't. I was simply worn out. I'm sick of having to make repairs all the time. I'm fed up with being the good daughter who gave up everything for different people. I was in a trance for the remainder of the day, oscillating between melancholy and anger. I was starting to feel the effects of the pressure, guilt, and relentless manipulation. I understood for the first time that this was more than a passing dispute. Unless I broke it, this loop would continue indefinitely. I vowed to myself as I laid in bed that night, I would not allow them to pull me back in. I would not back down no matter how much they tried to guilt me or how hard they pushed me. Stopping being their crotch was something I owed to myself. But they weren't finished yet, as I would soon discover. By no means. Upon my parents' unexpected arrival and their ridiculous demand for $2,000 per month, I believed I had seen every trick in the book. I believed I was at last ready for their guilt trips and emotional blackmail. I convinced myself that if I stood my ground, they would back off. Those who thrive on control, however, have a tendency to persevere. They get more intense. The following week felt like a pressure cooker. In little time at all, my parents quickly spread the word about their egotistical daughter leaving them when they needed her most. It wasn't until I began receiving calls and texts from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years that I realized how far they had gone. First, it was my Uncle Gary once more, who always managed to keep the peace in the family. "Uncle Gary," he said. "Sarah, your mom called me crying. She's heartbroken about everything that's happening. I get that you're upset, but can't you just compromise a little? Family is more important than pride." I tightened my jaw as I gazed at my phone. How did pride enter into this? Was it prideful to spend half the month living out of a suitcase and not want to pay someone else's mortgage? My cousin Rachel, who enjoys pushing her nose where it doesn't belong, then sent me a note. "Rachel, I don't mean to be impolite, but this is a little ridiculous. Are you simply allowing your brother and his children to suffer, Sarah? It's chilly. I didn't believe you were that way." Whatever the truth, my parents had created their own version of events, making me the bad guy, the one who had deserted her family, the one who was more concerned with money than her sad brother and his helpless kids, and they made me the black sheep overnight, and it worked. Naturally, my brother Mark seized the opportunity to stoke the fires, posting more frequently and sharply on social media. Some people say they care about family, but when times get tough, they're nowhere to be found, Mark wrote on Facebook. "Even if it means bearing this burden alone, I'll stop at nothing to ensure my children are happy." My phone buzzed with a notice from a group chat that my cousins and I were sharing, and I chose to ignore it until Rachel shared a screenshot of Mark's most recent message, adding, "Yikes, he's talking about you, isn't he?" His friends and random acquaintances flooded the comments with sympathy and encouragement, but no one knew the truth, and Mark didn't care. The humiliation was unbearable to me. Mark knew exactly what he was doing, portraying himself as the father who never gives up, the struggling hero, and me as the cold-hearted, self-centered sister who refused to help. My mother crossed another line just when I thought things couldn't get any worse. On Tuesday morning, I was in the middle of a conference call when my employer, Tom, knocked on my office door. Tom was uneasy. "May I speak with you for a moment, Sarah?" Dread gripped my gut as I nodded and muted my phone, and Tom shut the door behind him and took a seat across from me. "Your mom called the office again," he added with care. "She didn't speak to me directly, but she left a message with reception." My face flushed with shame. "I'm really sorry. I'll take care of it." "It's okay," Tom said, raising his hand. "Family matters come up. I wanted to make sure that everything was well. Please let me know if you require time off for whatever reason." I answered sharply, "There's nothing going on." And I detested the fact that my mother had brought my work life into her mess. "I'll make sure it doesn't happen again," I continued. My work was the one place I'd managed to keep apart from my family's craziness, and now she was invading it too. Tom nodded and walked away, but the damage was done. I felt ashamed and remained at my desk for a long time, staring blankly at my computer screen. How did she? My parents were trying harder, my brother was using his children as weapons, and the rest of the family had taken sides. By the end of the week, I was emotionally spent. The texts, phone calls, and gossip felt unrelenting, and I couldn't go a day without someone attempting to manipulate or guilt-trip me back into submission. I had just finished cleaning my apartment on a Saturday afternoon when I heard a knock on the door. I knew immediately who it was without even looking through the peephole, so I opened it to find Mark standing there with his arms crossed and a frown on his face. This was the last straw. "What are you doing here, Mark?" I inquired. He didn't waste time making small talk. "Sarah, we must speak. This has continued for too long." I stopped the doorway by crossing my arms. "No, Mark, there's no need for conversation. You must go." He raised his voice and screamed, "You don't get to just walk away from your family." Jason and Liam couldn't comprehend why their aunt no longer cared about them. "Mom and Dad are losing their hearts because of you. You're shattering mine." Something broke inside of me. "I'm not the one who left, Mark. You did that because you believed that I owed you something simply because I put in more effort and made wiser decisions, and that I should clean up your mess. I finished carrying you." For once, Mark had no rebuttal and appeared astonished, as if no one had ever spoken to him in that manner. "Go home, Mark," I murmured softly. "Nurse your own family. I'm finished." When I heard his footsteps departing, I felt a wave of tiredness slam over me. I stood there trembling for a second, half expecting him to knock again or yell through the door, but he didn't. My family wasn't just requesting assistance, they felt entitled to it. My money, my time, my life. And when I dared to refuse, they made it their mission to punish me for it. I sat on my couch that night and stared at the wall, thinking about everything that had happened over the past few months, including the eviction from my basement suite, the incessant guilt trips, the invasion of my workplace, and the lies Mark spread online. At that moment, I understood that I had two options. I could either walk away from this losing war or continue to fight it. One of the few people who had supported me during this ordeal was my buddy Jessica, whom I called the following morning. "Jess, I'm moving," I declared. "Where are you moving?" "I'm not sure yet. Outside the state. A long way off. I require a new beginning." Without hesitation, Jessica said, "Good. You're worthy. Sarah, do it for you." I put the pieces in motion over the course of the following 2 weeks, applying for a job transfer within my organization and beginning my search for apartments in Charlotte, North Carolina, a city I had always wanted to visit because it was close enough to provide me with space without making me feel like I was running away. I placed a brief letter on the kitchen table at my previous residence on the day I packed up my car and left Columbus, but I kept it a secret from both Mark and my parents. "I can't continue living this way, even though I love you. One day, I hope you'll understand." I don't know if they ever will. As I drove down the highway toward Charlotte, I experienced a strange range of emotions, including relief, anger for the way my family treated me, and grief for the family I had to leave behind. For the first time in years, I felt free. Free from obligations that weren't mine, free from guilt, and free to start over. The kilometers behind me made it clear to me that I was choosing myself, and for once, that was sufficient rather than fleeing.